It's whole and complete unto itself. And everyone that sees it reports the same description. Everyone. And what obscures that? What doesn't allow that to fully permeate the life? To fully be lived? You know, the struggle with so many spiritual personalities is it's divided into, these are my glimpses, and this is my happens to me on retreat, and this is what, you know, these are my precious experiences, and they may have been 20 years ago, but by God, that's the one that I'm going to keep trying to make re-happen or happen again. And then there's my life, right? And what you finally begin to see, and it usually takes, you know, hitting your wall or hitting your head against the wall over and over and over, that the only way that it does not completely permeate the life, because that's its natural way, that's its natural function. It will naturally move in and permeate the life. And the only reason it doesn't is because there's an unconscious, conditioned, in most cases, fear, loss of control. We have some idea of the spiritual death. And so we, you know, bring up all of these unconscious, they're quite innocent and unconscious objections and identities of those particular objections. That's the only obscuration that doesn't allow these deep glimpses and these deep seeings of who you are to fully come in and touch and permeate and liberate what it's not. It isn't two. It cannot be two. It can't be human life, this is my daily life, this is what I do, and then this is my spiritual life. It will never, ever, ever, ever work out. So we have this opportunity. This Sangha is such a beautifully mature and high integrity and willing. There's such a beautiful willingness here. We have this opportunity to fully bring forth the spirit, the being, the presence, love, the living being, whatever you want to call it. It's sort of, it's your deal. Find something that's really meaningful to you. And bring your attention back to that, moment by moment, by moment, by moment. And the more we're together, the more the field starts to become prominent. The holy sacred field of one, the great being, becomes prominent. The more you become quieter, the more you settle, the more open and the more spacious your attention becomes. Then it becomes palpable. That's the gift of that's the gift of a retreat. Is it becomes palpable, it becomes rich, it becomes the only truth there is. That's the actuality of it. And because it's who you are, it becomes recognized. And so in that, it's such a gorgeous opportunity to sort of bring your attention back to that. And then whatever reveals itself, whatever arises, really it's this sacred presence that begins to welcome everything that it's not back to itself. It isn't who you are. It's just something that has been hidden, something that's been encapsulated with fear or pain or wounding. shame, some denial. So the prominence of the living presence comes into the foreground. And you get this long, long taste of what that is like to live from that. Not just when you're practicing, not just when you're, reading some sacred thing, or not just when things are going really well. It becomes prominent, period. Moment by moment by moment by moment. That's the commitment I'm asking you to make, is what is that like if you brought that into the foreground? What would that be like? For every day, all day long, no matter what you're doing, having a good day, having a bad day, frustrated, something's not going your way, maybe you don't like something they had for dinner, whatever. Our minds just grab anything that will try to obscure the living presence that's really occupying. It's a shift of occupancy. It's occupying the space that you recognize or identify yourself as a separate person. I remember, my husband and I, Nate and I, had this, wonderful teacher for some years, Jean Klein. And he used to talk about that he felt for a while it was kind of an uncomfortable experience for him, is that he was being occupied by something else. And that's what he meant. That the living spirit becomes prominent. It starts to occupy that space that was identified as someone separate. And then you just become accustomed to it. And you walk around and you act like, whoever you've been, Jennifer or Joy or, whatever. But what is prominent, what is the pure presence, what is shining forth is who you are. For a long time, I'd play this little game with myself, and so I'd say, okay, so what does the Sharon-ness feel like? There's a quality of Sharon-ness, right? Todd-ness, Caroline-ness, right? There's a quality, it's a flavor. So what if that sort of opened up and relaxed? And what's the quality of just pure spirit? Just the pure presence? What does that feel like? What is that quality like? And then there would be this relaxing and opening of this sense of Sharon-ness into this that is just as palpable, it's just not as familiar, of just pure presence. And then what is it like when the pure presence starts to shine through the Sharon-ness? And what's that like? And then you begin to notice that sometimes there's just this pure empty presence. It's not dynamic at all. It's very still. It's just, it's the stillness. It's the silence. And other times it rises and it becomes dynamic, and it's, there's a kind of a blissful, loving, inclusive quality. And at other times there's like a little bit more of a Sharon-ness, and it comes out and meets in relationship, and then it, when that's not called out anymore, then it comes back and it sort of settles in. We attempt to hold it in a certain kind of position, just like we've held ourselves in a certain kind of position called me, right? It's a rigid, held position. So what is it like if the living spirit just becomes, it's in this moment, it's called forth, and whatever is appropriate for that moment? What is that like? And what is it like when the objection is so strong that we feel resentful, we feel not loved, we feel out of control, whatever it is. And every personality has its kind of flavor of its objection. We're being very critical, very judgmental. What's that like? How does that, what is that experience like? What would it be like if we weren't holding and believing and totally identifying with that momentary experience? Because you'll notice they're all momentary. That's the great anicca. Everything changes. Every moment changes. I know I'm not saying anything that you don't already know in your heart. We are living in a time, I think historically, that has never happened before. We're living in a time of the greatest contrast of light, of grace, of brilliance. And we're living in the time of the shadow arising in absolutely every aspect, individually, politically, our earth, our home, everything is being brought to the surface, and we're all witnessing it. We've developed a kind of a technology and the ability to witness it instantly.